Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new camp build, and today we are taking advantage of the Happy Builder public world to build at a marked location, the NAR repair yard down in the Cranberry Bog. So let's jump in and do this. Okay, so Happy Builder. This is one of the public worlds, as I say, and everybody's got access, so I thought fair game while it's up. We'll take advantage of the relaxed restrictions. So here we are at the NAR repair yard. You can't actually see the original icon because my camp icon is covering it, but there's Watoga just over there, Big Ben Tunnel East just up the train tracks, and if we shoot over into the Savage Divide here, you can see Foundation is over there. So nice little spots on the edge, more or less, here of the Cranberry Bog. We've got a nice few buildings here that are already in place. We've got the tower and the concert hut here, which is pretty cool. You can take a look at where I've dropped the camp unit there. It's pretty central. Could have done with maybe being a tiny little bit further back, because that back corner that we're looking towards there is ever so slightly cut off by the edge of the build area. But it's basically a good fit, this spot, because it pretty much all fits inside the build area. It's kind of hard to eyeball when you're actually dropping the unit in, but it works. So, we have some large gaps in these chain link fences we're going to have to seal up. However, I'm not going to show all of them because it's the same thing over and over and we want to keep things to a reasonable length, but we'll mix up and show the important bits. So we'll get some of these junk fences in. We're going to have to reverse a few of them as we've got bits of the chain link that stick out. You can sort of see some here that prevent placement of certain things. See, whilst the Happy Builder world does lower a lot of the building restrictions, it doesn't remove them entirely. Collision is still an issue. You can float things around much more easily. We can't sink them into the ground, which is unfortunate. Hopefully they'll tweak the settings a little bit in time and give us a little bit of increased flexibility, but still, it does make life a little bit easier. So moving on over this side, we're also going to use some of the regular walls, which with Happy Builder on don't have to be snap to foundations anymore, so we can mix up the pieces we've got available. So there's a collision getting in the way a little bit as well. So some of the cool things about the Happy Builder world, as I've mentioned before, obviously they let you build at marked locations, or many marked locations, not all of them. And obviously it gives you increased flexibility in the building, but it doesn't let you do absolutely anything. The collision is still a thing, there are still restrictions. If we were to use custom worlds, for example, you would actually be able to lower the restrictions even further. My hunch as to the reason why they haven't done that is that with still having 24 people on there, if you had massive build budgets and massive build areas, you just end up with the same issue as before, where it starts to drag the servers down a little bit. But in this instance, it's sort of a little more restrictive than perhaps we'd like, but it is increased flexibility, so that is cool at the same time. So I'm going to carefully get these walls in. So just using one of the regular ones here. We'll plug up the gaps. You can dress up a few little bits here and there as well, and plug up some of the scrappy gaps in the chain link as well with smaller items and provide a little bit of extra support to this. But I figure we're just going to assume that the unsupported walls like this are more dug into the ground, so the earth itself is keeping them upright. But it works, you know. We'll be hiding it a little bit as well. It mixes things up, it adds a little bit of variety, which is nice. So, over on this side, by the train tracks, we have a bigger issue. One of the things you can't do in this Happy Builder world, or on custom worlds either, now I think about it, is delete things, other than the stuff you built, obviously. So this bit of fence on the floor here is preventing anything from being placed in the gap, which is very annoying and inconvenient. And because, unfortunately, the snapping to a certain extent, even with toggled snapping off, is still kind of a thing. The walls will want to snap to the ground, and I can't just very lightly float them over the top. So we're coming up with a workaround, which is a rare occasion where I've actually found a use for this particular bridge, because it doesn't go high enough. Although I might find some in a future build, because I can kind of just float it, so that's cool. But we're going to use this to form a kind of large structure and just use it to plug up the gap here, and then we'll reinforce it a little bit. So a bit of careful positioning, because it won't clip through the shipping container at the back there, nor the fence at the back as well. So it's kind of a tight fit. If you get it just about right, the add-on pieces, not the end pieces, but the middle sections, those will squeeze through the gap, but these end pieces, unfortunately, are not going to go on at that end because the gap's just not quite big enough. So we'll run it right up to the wall there, and you won't really be able to notice. It'll do the job. You see what I mean here? That's just not going in. Cannot be persuaded, unfortunately. So we'll run it right up, and there we go. However, this is supposed to be a defensive emplacement, and it's a little open right now. So once we've got the staircase on, we'll close it off. So these staircases, again, don't have to be snapped to foundations in the Happy Builder world, so we'll just manoeuvre them in. But they do have a tendency to kind of jump around a little bit, as you can kind of see here. It wants to pop down here. If you look closely there, it kind of snaps to the end, but without actually snapping to it, if that makes any sense. So they're not as flexible as we'd like, but they are more flexible than usual, so we manage. It's not quite as close as I'd like it to be. So we can grab these half walls, carry on with that same principle of just dropping them in once it decides it wants to sit there instead of jumping up onto the railing. There we go. I did think about putting it on the outside here, but unfortunately it's just not going to allow. That collision is just still too absolute in this mode. And as I say, even on a custom world that would be the same situation. So we'll just drop some other bits and pieces in here as well to mix up the textures a bit. There's a warehouse piece, and we'll use one of the metal ones because I basically never do. So this one I went the other way around, partly because of why not, partly because it's kind of braced on both sides anyway. See, there's metal cross beams on both sides there, so it works, and it looks a bit more scrappy and wasteland, which is kind of my vibe, you know? So need a little bit of extra cover on the end here for the stairs. So as that gap is too small to fit anything in, we'll just drop this junk wall on the outside. There we go. And unfortunately, I did want to put something in here to close that little gap up, but it's a no-go. So we'll drop an extra fence outside. And again, it just breaks up the otherwise flat texture a little bit as well. So, on to the next bit. With increased flexibility, let's take advantage of it. So I'm going to build a kind of hut over the top of this Quonset hut, just to add a little bit more interest and sort of make it look a bit more like any resident settlers or wastelanders have built this place up a bit. So there goes a fight over at Watoga. So we can just manually place these upper floors in, and a little bit of eyeballing to get them to line up with the edge here. And we can now put a staircase in. However, the staircases aren't quite long enough, so a bit of finagling will be required. You can basically put these in manually without actually snapping them in like this. So you can sort of see what I'm doing here. But unfortunately, once you get to the edge of the floor piece, the collision starts to mess you around again, and it won't sit quite where you want. You see, I was fiddling with this for quite some time before I came up with my workaround, which we'll take a look at in just a sec. But you see, it's not going to sit close. It's either going to dip underneath or sit over the top of that floor piece, which is highly annoying, but what can we do? So, we can, of course, snap straight to a full-sized floor piece here, and then deal with the fact the bottom's floating, but it won't be up against the edge of the Quonset hut there, which is what I want. I want the stairs as close to that back wall as possible. So, we're going to drag this very carefully over, and because we're using the top of the Quonset hut to form the position of the floors anyway, it means when we snap stuff back in, this will line up, and we'll eyeball it into place. And oh look, neat and tidy, first time, winner. So, now we put the floors back in. This took a bit of doing. It didn't want to snap back in for some reason, but eventually it was persuaded. There we go. Now we put that single floor back on. Perfect. However, we do have quite the drop off the bottom there. So if we're going to progress up here, we're going to need a stair underneath. So back to the regular one. It's a bit wide, obviously, but best tool for the job that we have at the moment. So we'll switch the snapping off again and sort of finagle it into place. Again, it wants to mess around with the collision now, so it doesn't want to sit underneath. And if you try and put it up in front, it'll pop around a bit. It's highly unhelpful of it, but with a bit of patience, we get it in there. One of the other cool things Bethesda have fixed with this Fallout Worlds update is these railings. They actually work properly now, and the small ones specifically now snap to floors. So, I want this to be too wide, but I've already got this sort of large floor pieces marking out the centre, so we're going to snap a half one on each side, just to make it that little bit larger. And it basically fits with the same footprint as the building underneath. And we'll get some walls on here. I'm going to do half walls, because I don't want this thing to be too big and chunky. So, a few half walls, a couple of roofs, and we're going to cut the corner off and make it into a balcony, just to make the structure a little more interesting of a shape. So close off this back edge, and again we'll mix up the textures a little bit. We use some wood on the lower side, because it makes sense when you're building over the top of something. And then we'll top it off with the greenhouse pieces. when I can eventually find the corner piece. There we go. In there. And we've got a little gap here we need to close off. Fortunately, that works nicely. So we'll close off this balcony while we're on the subject. So you can see those half ones are snapping on the edge here just fine. They're not going to do it there because it's halfway along a large floor piece, so we'll have to manually drop this in, which was a bit of a faff, but it actually worked out surprisingly well. At a glance you can't really tell it's been manually placed, which, as you can see, the collision jumping around a little bit here, or making the piece jump around, is kind of a win how well it came out in the end. Just, come on, a little bit of patience and careful manoeuvring. There we go. Doesn't quite fit, but at a glance, good enough. So, this wall is unfortunately not going to snap because I have no idea why, but I haven't got the snapping on here, but it wasn't doing it with it on either, so I don't know. Computer says no, apparently. But we can manually place it in, and we've got lines on the floor to use as a guide as well, so that works out. And we'll snap that window on the top and close it off. So, a little bit of dead space underneath here. I wanted to make some use out of this at the back, so we'll extend our crafting area here, as when it comes to it, actually putting stuff inside this concert hut is kind of a nightmare. So, we're going to need a little bit of extra space outside. So, we'll just carefully position this on. I'm basically going to float it into place and use the weird collision of the ground to force the thing into place here with the snapping off. Unfortunately, the stairs are once again being a pain in the butt, and won't allow us to place anything under them, as is all too often the case. Things want to jump up to the top. In this case, it just will not snap on at all. So we'll nudge this over as far as it will go to the left, and then stick a single on the end. I actually ended up taking the single one out and replacing it with a longer piece, so that it made an L shape, just to have a bit more room later. But you'll see that in the tour. Once again, these stairs don't snap to upper floors, so we'll have to put them in manually. Fortunately, it just about works. You see there's a tiny gap there because, well, you can see it popping around there. It's awkward like that. Turning snapping off is great. Can we turn collision off as well, please? That would be fantastic. Although we're going to wind up with some really weird stuff being built if that's the case. Not necessarily a bad thing, though. So, doing the old stagger the floor so you can snap posts onto the corner trick. And then we have the thing supported at this side. Figure it's resting on packed earth at the back, so that's fine. And there we go. So, moving on to this corner, I wanted to put a little kind of guard post in here. So needed something to go in this corner to occupy the space, otherwise it just looked kind of unfinished. Ended up being quite the nice entranceway on this, which I'll have to talk about in a bit more detail in the tour, because there's a couple of things I did during the decoration phase that didn't get recorded, so we'll have to have a look at those when the time comes. For now, these are the Brotherhood-themed building pieces that were actually a Fallout First reward from the last season. So, sadly not available anymore, but who knows, they might make an appearance in future in the bullion store. Mind you, we're still waiting on the greenhouse pieces, so hell knows. A little close to that back fence there, so we're going to have to redo this and just realign it. But now we can get those pieces in. So, let's stick a roof on here. My first thought was to use the flat ones, because they're not actually flat, the flat roofs in this. As you see, they've got a bit of an interesting structure to them, but from ground level, you can't really tell. So we'll stick an angled roof on here just to make it a little bit more interesting to the eye. The bit that I do in the decoration phase is actually a bit that really makes it look more interesting. But it's dead easy, so I'll talk you through it at the time. So when I find those pieces, we'll plug up these corners. There we go. Nice and easy. Slightly better organised in the menus than some of the other pieces this particular set, which is nice. So, with the main part of the building done, let's jump on to the tour. Okay. All decorated and looking good. I do like this place. It's come out quite nicely. It's kind of a pity I can't bring it over into adventure mode, sadly. Unfortunately, that's the drawback with these worlds, but who knows? Maybe in future something like that might be arrangeable. The restrictions on building in Happy Builder mode mean that it shouldn't be too onerous if people do want to port them across, so it might happen in future. So, Nice and plugged up. Very kind of scrappy wasteland sort of defences. It's a case of plugging gaps rather than fortifying the whole thing, which is in keeping with that wasteland vibe, but I like how it looks. And I like that we've got the boxes and barrels and stuff in place as well, which you often don't have with camp builds, but using an existing location, you can kind of incorporate the existing decorations in, which makes the thing look a little bit more wasteland and lived in, which is really nice. I still want those added to the build menu so that we can put them in our own builds in regular adventure mode, but we'll get there eventually. Let's pass on through the gates. So I can't lock the gate, unfortunately, but it's nice to be able to open and close it. A little defensive area on the left here for the guard post. Just a load of piled in bits and pieces to shore that up. You see, here's our guard hut. Take a little look inside. The roof just extended out quite nicely, so it wasn't too difficult to do that, which is cool. Posts we'll take a look at in a minute. Yeah, fairly basic. Got a little desk using the TV there to simulate a terminal until we get them. Hazmat suit in the corner. Simple, but I like it. Heading up on here. Not really somewhere you can stand and fire out from, but it does look sort of like the whatever they could find available and drag back has been used to shore up this gap, and as this is a large object, it's done the job. Chucked a few brambles in there as well, just to dress up the edge a little bit as well. We will head on. It's a nice open area here, which is I was concerned it was going to be too open, but it works out quite well. So looking at those posts, they don't snap in here obviously, but with it being a happy builder world, and I messed up the gate here in the decoration phase, have to change that one later. Those posts won't snap in, so it was a case of free placing them and eyeballing it very carefully. You have to stand a little bit further back so that you can actually see the bottom of the post, otherwise it won't let you place it. And drop it down and then just snap the small ones on top, and with a little bit of trial and error they went in. So, into the concert hut. In here it was difficult to decorate. I managed to get a few extra bits in, but there's a lot of stuff here anyway, so it doesn't really need much. You see I've got the Jenny on the top there. Managed to squeeze the stash box in with a little bit of help from the rug glitch. And the scrap box in the corner as well. And I got the weapons workbench in here because the armour bench was already in place. But most of the other bits and pieces were here already, and that's about the limit of what I can place because it doesn't really like you building in these, even with the decreased restrictions. So we've had to spread out our crafting areas a little bit. We'll have a look at them as we go around. So just snap directly on a couple of posts there to provide a bit of extra support. It's not perfect, but it does the job. A little bath here. Rug glitch again to get the bath under the pump there, but it works. If you need somewhere to get clean, we're good. So this little area at the back has become a crafting area as well. I've got the Tinker's bench and the chem station out here. Made sense to have the chem station out in the open air so you don't choke on fumes and stuff. Again, the pallets and the boxes and the barrels here just really giving it that lived-in look that I really like. Sadly, I couldn't place them, but the fact they're already here does the job, which is good. Still want them, though. So, heading up to our hut. Figure somebody's going to be able to live up here. So, there's one of the sleeping areas, or the main sleeping area. A little bit of an area for some sitting and hanging out as well. There's our balcony. See out over the rest of the camp. Looking quite nice from up here. That bird in a cage, by the way, was a previous season reward. Season 3, I think. Again, a Fallout first one. I think it was Season 3. It might have been Season 4. But a very, very nice little thing to have as well. It's very cool. So we will swing on round. And this little structure here was basically in place beforehand, but I've added floors on top and snapped stairs to them. It was nice and easy to do that. It didn't really take too much effort. Basically the same techniques we used earlier, but on top of this building. Just manually place a couple of floors in there for those brewing stations as well, just to make them a little bit, look a little tidier so the floor's level, and I did a few bits of decoration as well. And up here, the idea was to put a guard post at the end, but I thought a nice open air sitting area, hangout space would be nice as well. There is supposed to be a turret on that stash box. Unfortunately, it's gone invisible for some reason, and I have no idea why. But we can pretend. The wire's coming round. For those who are wondering, by the time I did the decoration on this, I was maybe one item away from the build limit. I had to take a couple of bits and pieces out during the decoration phase so I could run wires around the place. So definitely crammed to the max, this place. As I say, the build budget is the same size in Happy Builder as it is in Adventure Mode. We dropped a little seedy shed in the end here just to provide an extra structure. Turned it into my vendor space. So I've got the camp vendor there and somewhere for people to hang out. Nice little pleasant area to wait in if you need to queue for the vendor. I'll close up the door there. Thought I'd do something different and use that curtain. I do like putting the windmill on the top there. It fits quite nicely and was very, very easy to do as well, so that was cool. Little power armor station down here, taking advantage of the sort of industrial looking outside of the shed there. So I kind of kept that vibe. Just tuck this perimeter wall fence in there for a little turret emplacement on the corner here and make sure anything attacking from that side is dealt with. And we'll head up inside the tower. Now, some of the stuff in here was already here, but this is Commander Deguare's little hangout space. I blocked up the windows using those responder signs. Those went in quite nicely and then added some extra decoration over the top of it. Just about managed to drop Commander Deguare's unit in there. I had to use an explosive gun to get some of the boxes to move, but it worked. And drop the bed in as well. But everything else, apart from the bed and Deguare's ally unit in the corner there, was basically here already, so it was semi-decorated as all before I even started. Hole in the roof's not ideal. Speak of the devil, there she is. A little cooking area and hangout space in the middle. We've got a big open space here, so it seemed like a sensible way of doing it. And with that shipping container there already, I thought I'd add a few extra bits and pieces of junk to the heap there, just to make it look a little bit more interesting. So we'll make our way out. We can have a little look at the roof I've put over the entranceway here and how I've extended it out, just to give it a bit more of a complete shape and make the whole thing look a little bit more interesting than just a kind of box structure in the corner. And I'm happy with it. It makes for a nice entranceway to the camp, especially coupled with the billboard out front. So there we go. My first Happy Builder World build. Proper one anyway. I do hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, when I get a go, please do consider dropping subs and likes for me. I do very, very much appreciate it. Social media links, merch store and channel memberships are all available down the video if you're interested in supporting the channel in that way. I very much appreciate it as well. It really helps out. And do join us for live streams as well. We are of course playing Fallout 76, playing a little Deathloop on the side, and we'll be getting back to The Witcher very soon as well. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.